Just over a week ago on August 4th, I visited Michigan's Adventure for the very first time. Most of you probably know that Michigan's Adventure gets pretty neglected by the Cedar Fair chain, and based on some reviews, I went in with lower expectations. After exiting the park, I came out with a positive view and my expectations were exceeded. Here's my full review of Michigan's Adventure in Muskegon, Michigan. One of the main reasons not a lot of people visit Michigan's Adventure is because of the location. It's in a hard-to-reach area of Michigan, about halfway up the coast of Lake Michigan. It's about 3 hours from Detroit, Toledo, and Chicago. The closest city that is of note is Grand Rapids, which isn't very big compared to other Midwestern cities. However, there are some cool attractions nearby. The Silver Lake Sand Dunes are about 45 minutes north of Michigan's Adventure. Muskegon is a very nice town with some good food options, and of course, Lake Michigan is just a short drive away. So if there are other attractions you'd like to experience instead of spending the whole day at Michigan's Adventure, there are definitely options. Driving up to the park, you'll notice that it's basically in the middle of nowhere. There is a small highway leading up to the exit, and after getting off, it's a good 5-minute drive to the park gates. However, that makes for one of the strongest points of this park. Michigan's Adventure is a very pretty park. It's surrounded by trees, has lots of water features around the park, and allows for very picturesque moments. As you drive into the parking lot, you'll already notice that the park seems outdated, just from the parking toll booths and faded paint on the ground. However, having shivering timbers towering over the parking lot as you enter makes up for the outdated look. It's very intimidating and an awesome experience, but more on that later. Finally, you'll reach the entrance of the park. This is a weird entrance, as there really isn't a grand entrance like most other parks nowadays. Instead, you have a small Michigan's Adventure logo, and you can't really see any of the attractions except for the Mad Mouse roller coaster and the giant gondola wheel. With all that talked about, let's get into the park. First, let's talk about the main attractions at Michigan's Adventure. As for flat rides, there is very little of note, and honestly, I feel like Michigan's Adventure would benefit from a large flat ride before a standout coaster. Shivering Timbers is good on its own, and the park could really use a drop tower or pendulum. Right now, the most thrilling flat ride in the park is the Upcharge Ripcord Flat Ride. It is of note that we did not venture into Wild Water Adventure. It looked like a fantastic water park with some very impressive looking slide structures. However, we were more in it for the dry park. Other than Ripcord, there is a small log flume which looked to be pretty fun. There are also free swan boats to experience that go out onto the lake. There's a train ride which was unfortunately closed on our visit, and there's a river raft ride named Grand Rapids, a play on words with the nearby city. The train ride serves as a connector between the two ends of the park. Instead of completing a circle around the park, the paths end at Thunderhawk and Shivering Timbers. The only way to get from one end to the other is by walking around the whole lake or taking the train. This leaves a lot of room for expansion in that area of the park if they ever build a new coaster, but it also provides a very pretty and secluded setting. After that, there aren't really any notable flat rides. Let's go through a quick rundown of the coasters. The main draw is of course Shivering Timbers, a massive CCI Woody that has a ton of airtime hills. This ride has endless airtime moments, each providing some outstanding floater, and a couple having an ejector moment. There are even some surprise laterals on the turnaround and ending helix. The only problem with this coaster is the smoothness. You have to ride this near the front of the train for a smooth ride. The back car especially is so rough that it's hard to enjoy the experience. I usually don't have a problem with rough wooden coasters, but this one being so massive, the valleys really took away from the experience. But the airtime in the front row still makes this coaster worth riding. This is a rare and phenomenal credit. Next door is Wolverine Wildcat, a coaster that really surprised me. It got Titan Track on the drop in 2022 and reprofiling this year to now include a twisted double-up style element. The smoother first half had some fantastic airtime pops and was incredibly smooth. If it continued that trend, this ride might have made my top 30, but the second half was still very uncomfortable and had no real airtime moments except for one pop after the double down. It was a fun experience, but the park needs to rework the second half. Overall, Wolverine Wildcat was a big surprise for me. Mad Mouse had a huge wait, and we opted for the fast lane at the park so we weren't waiting 90 minutes for a Wild Mouse. Mad Mouse is just a typical Wild Mouse, but the second half had one cool ejector airtime moment. The laterals were more comfortable than other Wild Mice I've experienced as well. This was definitely my favorite Wild Mouse. Corkscrew right by the entrance is the most underwhelming looping coaster I've been on. It's super smooth for an old aero looper, but also incredibly short. It literally has 3 elements. The turns are forceless, but the corkscrews do provide some cool weightlessness. It's a good beginner coaster for inversions. Thunderhawk is a Vekoma SLC, and everyone knows how these ride. They are full of headbanging, and the intense layouts really don't make up for it. These rides always hurt. I was told Thunderhawk was smoother, and while I was a little more comfortable than Mind Eraser or T3, it was still a horrible experience. I do not recommend these rides unless you're credit hunting. But this was a super fun ride to watch over the water. Finally are the two kiddie coasters. Woodstock Express was closed, but Zack Zoomer was a smooth and fun family coaster. And that's really it for rides. There is a lot of space, but not a lot of rides here. They could definitely use a standout flat ride, and in my opinion, another inverting coaster. If Cedar Point ever removes Rougarou, it would fit perfectly here, or a small Vekoma Looper would be fantastic. Let's now talk about what Michigan's Adventure does right and what the park can do better. Michigan's Adventure does quite a bit right. The setting of this park is incredible. Being only minutes away from Lake Michigan is a plus, but because of the secluded setting, the park is surrounded by nothing but trees. In addition, the park sits around a massive lake with beautiful views of the coasters and rides along the water. Wolverine, Wildcat, Corkscrew, and especially Thunderhawk look fantastic above the lake. Also, all of the rides in the park are very well presented. Thunderhawk, Corkscrew, and Mad Mouse were all recently repainted with different colors, and all three look super nice. Corkscrew especially looks fantastic, especially since it's the first coaster you see when you enter the park. It makes a very nice first impression. The kiddie section called Camp Snoopy was also very well presented. It was recently redone, and you can tell how new it is. It has lots of new pavers, updated paint jobs, and overall looks great. However, the back part of the park near Shivering Timbers feels extremely outdated. The flat rides around the area look like they haven't been touched up in years, and just the whole area felt very old. There weren't a lot of flowers around the area either. My main problem with this park's atmosphere was the shade. I thought Kings Island had little shade, but Michigan's Adventure takes it to another level. Look at these pathways. These are in the brutal summer sun with no shade. And this is true with the whole park. As for food and drink, we didn't eat at the park, as we saved our appetite for a local restaurant in Muskegon, but from what I can tell, the food could use work for Cedar Fair standards. Most Cedar Fair parks have gotten new food options, such as Hugo's Italian Kitchen or the Grain and Grill. Besides Coaster's Dine-In, there was nothing of note except for some traditional pizza or chicken tenders. Coaster's is one of my least favorite spots at Cedar Point to eat, so having that be the best spot at Michigan's Adventure was disappointing. However, there was a surplus of drink stands around the park, which I appreciate, and none of them had long lines. As for operations, none of the coasters broke down for us except for Thunderhawk, which was down for about 10 minutes before it was back up and running. Maintenance was killing it on our visit. However, some rides had questionable dispatches. Wolverine, Wildcat, Shivering Timbers, and Thunderhawk all had great dispatch times. Rides like Corkscrew and Mad Mouse, though, were not doing so hot. Corkscrew had up to 5-minute dispatches, and while Mad Mouse had many cars on the track, it appeared only one was allowed to be cycling at a time. This meant stacking trains, and on a Wild Mouse, that meant guests had to wait over 90 minutes to ride. I know there were complaints about that in the past, but I thought they were exaggerated until I saw it in person. So what are my overall thoughts on Michigan's Adventure? Is it as bad as everyone says? Compared to the other Cedar Fair parks, it is of course going to be the lowest of the bunch because of the size and lack of investments. However, that doesn't mean it is a bad park by any means. In fact, I have Michigan's Adventure placed above Six Flags Darien Lake and even Kennywood. Michigan's Adventure's top coaster is incredible and worth a trek out here by itself, and the setting and presentation of the rides are fantastic. Most of the coasters look great, and the lake in the middle of the park makes for a memorable experience. And operations for most of the rides were pretty good. The park just needs more to get people coming back. Would I ever make a trip back to Michigan's Adventure? As it stands, no. Their coaster collection is small, and while we enthusiasts crap on it too much, in my opinion, it might be even better than Darien's lineup, there still needs to be another supporting coaster or flat ride. Also, the lack of shade and food options don't help the experience either. If you go in with Cedar Point or Kings Island level expectations, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you set your expectations to the level of Six Flags Darien Lake, Dorney Park, or other parks of that size, you'll be pleasantly surprised. I know I was. If you're in the area, definitely stop by, and I'd say you should make the drive up to Michigan's Adventure at least once. You may even find your new favorite wooden coaster. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment what you think of Michigan's Adventure and have a great rest of your day.